Welcome to Bad Dog Agility, a podcast helping you reach all of your dog agility goals. Whether it's competing under the bright lights of the televised finals at Westminster or successfully navigating a homemade course in your own backyard, we'll bring you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
The show starts with your hosts, Jennifer, Esteban, and Sarah.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 381. Today's podcast is powered by Canine Handler Fitness with Liz Joyce, built for agility handlers who want to keep up with their dogs. With Liz's All Access Pass, agility handlers at every fitness level can hop in right where they are and work towards their specific goals. From building strength and balance to boosting speed and stamina, these short, effective workouts target exactly what you need on course. Your dog's ready. Are you? Head to caninehandlerfitness.com to get started today. Today, we're going to be talking about what happens when you have litter mates or maybe two puppies of roughly the same age with your friends or your family or something like that, and kind of the unique dynamics that come along with that. And this came to us from a podcast listener who emailed us and said that her lifelong friend and her are getting puppies at the same time, and they've had so many conversations about how they're going to handle the comparison and the emotions that come with raising a dog at the same time. And she hoped that we might, consider a podcast on this topic. And as soon as she emailed me, I thought, well, I know somebody on this podcast that has many times before had litter mates with people very close to her. And I'm talking about Jen. And of course, Esteban and I actually have our own experience as well, having gotten puppies that are very similar in age. But I thought this is a topic that we could definitely talk about and have a lot of our own history to kind of draw from. We do have a podcast. It's 157, episode number 157 from March 20th, 2017. And this was before Jen joins the podcast. And it was just Esteban and I talking about kind of the pros and the cons and the good and the bad of comparison, of comparing your dog to other people's dogs. And so I haven't listened to it in a very long time. So, I think this is a nice fresh take on it with kind of that additional added layer of litter mates or puppies, with those close to you, like your friends, your family. So Jen, I did immediately think of you. I know that you've had puppies at the same time with your best friend, Abby. I know you've had puppies at the same time with your, co-owner breeder, Jean. You've had puppies at the same time with your mom. So I figured you have lots to say on this topic.
Yeah, this was something that as it got sent in, I was like, yep, I've been there. I've done that. And I have a lot of various personal experiences and personal emotions. But kind of my initial thoughts in terms of feedback and suggestions for someone else is that I tend to find in my experience, my both personal experience, but also I've had students who go out and get litter mates. Some students live in close proximity, some live, further away. In this case, we're talking close proximity because we're talking friends or training partners. And I tend to find that it goes one of two ways. There's no middle ground. You get an extreme on one end where it is fantastic. They love it. They love the journey together. They love to compare notes. They love to discuss how the training is going. It motivates them to train together and to get ideas from each other and to match along step by step. And they truly find the joy and the fun in almost kind of like the extra motivation and excitement. They get to debut together, things like that. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is it just doesn't work out well because there is the constant comparison, the constant, well, she's doing this. Should I be doing this? That dog's further along. That dog's an excellent, and I haven't even debuted. And while most people don't voice that super publicly, in my experience, they're not going to go telling the person that has the litter mate that they're feeling it, they're acting it. You can read their body language, or as their instructor, they're telling me, right? So I'm hearing it, or I'm hearing the questions of, well, should I be doing that? They're doing that. I saw on the online puppy group that they started the weaves and I'm not starting the weaves, and should we be doing it? Rarely do I get the middle ground of neutral, of caring or not caring. There's usually love it, or it becomes a huge problem. In my personal experience, at least in more recent time, it has not been a great thing for me. If we go way, way, way back when I was a junior handler with Guess, many of you might recognize that name just because he was the first dog that I got on the world team with back in 2004. Guess was a litter mate to my mom's dog, Splash. Now, mind you, as a kid, so it's a little bit different, but we got litter mates. And a lot of times what I think about, and I often will tell people, is in the end, when those dogs retired, all right, the resumes, if we want to think of it that way, whether you're talking actual resumes and accomplishments or just what they accomplished as companions and skills that they had, was pretty much the same. But the highs and lows at any given point along the way were, in one moment, she would be doing really well. That would be my mom and her female dog. And at one point, I would be doing really well. And there was this huge, like, kind of ebb and flow that kind of went back and forth. Her dog came out of the gates really strong and was kicking my butt and like getting it. And she was just little and got it. And she was a girl and she was smart. And I had the boy and he was slower to get it all. And then all of a sudden, like somewhere around excellent, like she went through this major fear period and was like running out of the ring. And my dog was just, Guess was just kind of being a dumb boy who just like went through the motions. And he had a good phase of doing well. And like in the end, I think he retired with Mach 11 and she retired with Mach 12. They both made national finals. They both went to USTA nationals many times. So like their resumes were the end. But at that time, I was very much just about like, oh, we'd go train together. We were at the same level. In recent time, I find myself doing a lot more of the comparison and the fears that come along with that. And I think really in today's day and age, that can happen whether you're doing litter mates or not. Right. I mean, that's, as you mentioned, what that kind of podcast talks about is it doesn't even have to be litter mates. You can just go onto social media and see somebody posting something really cool and fancy. Doesn't matter that it took them 22 times to get it, but they're posting that and you're thinking, man, that dog's doing so much better than mine and I'm falling behind. We also, I think, have a lot of that kind of analysis paralysis that happens where you so badly don't want to mess up that you're afraid to start. So then you fall behind. Yes. Uh-huh. And so for me in recent time, within the last 3 years, twice I've gotten litter mates with friends and I find myself constantly comparing and it wasn't good for me. It so much so that I would like have to think heavily about it. And it never was anything where I was frustrated with the other person. It was more frustrated with myself. So we had a litter of Shelties and actually my mom, myself, my best friend Abby, and my best friend Jean all got the 4 of them. And it was really, really, really fun as puppies. Like I'm talking so much fun. And then as we started to show and it was this one gets a leg and this one gets a leg and oh my gosh, this one's already halfway to the mock and I'm still back here and open. It became harder because you constantly feel like, you know, you're falling behind. You're not doing as good. There's this like unwritten pressure that you should be keeping up with the others. So for me, I think it definitely would be less ideal for me to try to have a litter mate or a dog. I think litter mates is harder because, you know, you have the same pedigree, you know, you have maybe a little bit more of the same genetics. So you do want to compare. Where if somebody has a Brittany Spaniel at the same age as the Golden Retriever, maybe you can say, oh, well, this one has more of a breed tendency to do that, even if they're the same age. So you kind of cut yourself some slack on things. Right. So I do think there is a little bit of difference if we're talking litter mates versus different dogs similar age. Now, you and Esteban had different breeds, so not litter mates, but similar ages, right? Yes. So did you find traits and tendencies to make that different for you?
Right. I think so. 2 different times in our career, we've had dogs that were very similar ages. So our most recent pair that were close in age were the Golden and the Poodle that we currently have. Both of them are COVID dogs. We got them just before COVID. So, you know, it's not like we planned it that way, but, you know, the world is kind of a big, scary place for those those two dogs these days. But again, golden and poodle. So very, very different dogs, different sizes. The poodle's like a medium size, so like a 16-inch, and the golden's a 20-inch. But even like way before that, we had two of our other dogs that were like, those two were born within 2 months of each other. Kind of our first generation of dogs, when we, like, literally our first agility dogs, was a golden and a miniature Australian Shepherd. And they were, I mean, how close were those birthdays? Were they like 6 months? Like, they were really close too. Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So, yeah. And I think at that time we got those because, we were getting the golden and then, realized we weren't sure we could share. Well, we were both wanting to do the sport, and we thought, like, I don't know that sharing a dog is going to work for us. And the second dog kind of fell into our lap. Wonderful, both of them, I would consider each of those dogs, one of our first agility dogs, and they both did amazing. I do think, I'm trying to think back to like, the issues. I do think that you're right, that when you have very different breeds, that the negative sides of comparison are a lot easier to manage because each of you are having different roadblocks, different struggles, and each of you can kind of help the other one brainstorm. Whereas, like you said, when you have the same dog, you're like, why isn't this working? And the other one's like, I don't know, work for me, and then it's like that, and then that just makes you feel worse. It did when you were talking, one of the things that I immediately thought of though, was I wondered, in your opinion, or in all of our opinions, in terms of whether it works out well or not, how much of that is dependent on the people, right? The people and their personalities and how they deal with stress and emotions and failure and those kinds of things, versus how much it has to do with the dogs versus it being like a total blend. Like, obviously, like, there are going to be dogs that are standouts, and there are going to be dogs that, don't turn out the way that you had hoped. And then I think that if that's the situation you find yourself in, like, you kind of even really didn't mention that aspect so much, but like, you can have, one person gets the dog where everything comes easy, and the other person gets the dog that, everything is like pulling teeth. And I think that situation can be really, really hard for people. But I also think that there are some people that, just struggle a little bit more with, comparing themselves and kind of the emotional aspect of it. So there's like the dog training aspect of it, right? Like, how do I get my dog to do better? But then there's like the emotional regulation aspect of it of, how can I not let my struggles get to me, to the point where I'm, feeling like a failure or feeling frustrated kind of beyond what, the situation, calls for.
And yeah, I think for me, the dog training side of things is the part that I like having littermates, or I like having dogs the similar age. And it's the emotional side of me that has a harder time regulating. And that's why I think back in like when I had Guess and Splash and my mom and I had littermates, it seemed fine because there wasn't the emotional part. I was a kid and it just was go out, have fun with your dog and play.
Right,
there was no at that time, like pressure that this is my career, pressure that, hey, this is Jen Crank, her dog better be good. It was just the dog training, and that was fun, right? Like, me and my mom would be like, okay, tonight we're going to teach our dog the tire. And they were both at the age to learn the tire. Okay, now we're doing weave pulls. We could do weave pulls together. I think it's been in more recent time that for me, the pressure part, because even when I think, I'll use Abby and I, because we've been through this so much together. The training side is fun, right? Like, we meet together a couple times a week. We have like standing appointments on Thursday. We do our training, and like, it's so fun to be able to be like, oh, let's start teaching this skill because they're the same age, right? They're the same age, and it's fun. We can like do the things together. And on the training side of things, I really, really enjoy it. and be able to bounce ideas because we're both, kind of working through the same thing. But then it gets into like the emotional part of more kind of once the performance aspect comes into play of, oh my gosh, her dog's so much faster than mine. Oh my gosh, her dog is doing XYZ skill. She's not having any, issues with stress or distraction at the trial, and my dog's going to the trial and running off and visiting the judge. That's true story. Skittles likes to visit. And I don't see that. And it's like, oh, why is my dog doing that? My dog's, out there, just not looking as good as the other ones, or with Lickety Split, he was the big 16-inch dog and they were all, little 12. He was the boy compared to their girls and they're all just ding, ding, ding right over the bars. No issue. And my dog's out there, knock a bar, knock a bar, knock a bar, knock a bar, which of course then is affecting his cueing. And then it's that, emotional, okay, well, I'm a novice and they're now working on double cues. I don't know if it was that extreme, but I think you're absolutely right that there's two aspects. And I think from the emotional side, that's where it really kind of comes into what type of person you are. And
Right.
Again, like for me, there's all this like unspoken pressure that I put on myself of performance. And this dog's got to be as good as the last dog, and I do this for a living. So everybody's going to be watching like, her dog better be good because, she has more hours to spend to do it than the average person. So, whatever. So I think your point about like the training and the emotion are super valid points and things that I hadn't really thought about.
Right. And the thing that you said that I hadn't really thought about was you were talking about how your successes just don't always line up. So like in my head, like I'm a math person, right? And I'm imagining like a sine graph, like those graphs that go like up and down and up and down and like a wavelength, and then, and really what you're talking about, it really applies not just to litter mates or puppies or anything like that, but really to any time you spend a lot of time with and care deeply about another person and their success. So, I think about, me and Esteban, I think about you and Abby or you and your mom or whatever. But, it is hard when as a unit, you're not truly happy unless both of you have had success at the same time. And if you think of those sine graphs that I just talked about, right? If the waveforms aren't lined up, then like you said, one day's your day and the other dog is in queuing. The next day is their day and you're in queuing and like everybody's trying to be happy for the other, but disappointed for themselves. And then you think about going somewhere like the World Championships where, I think about, not to just throw them under the bus when they're not even here to talk about, but I just imagine what it's like to be Jessica Agiu and Perry DeWitt. And, when they went to AWC together and like one of them has this like amazing, brilliant run and the other one faults and then vice versa. And like, that is a hard situation to deal with emotionally.
Yes, I can attest to that because for me and Abby, probably one of the highest moments of my entire career in agility ever was last March when Abby and I both won AKC Nationals on the same day, on the same course, on the same run. I can't think of many moments as thrilling for me as that moment. I'm not even going to say that it was just Abby and I'm going to put Betsy in that. I mean, she won 8. Abby goes out, kills it, wins 12. The pressure I was feeling, we win 6. I was like, just retire. I should just quit right then and there. You're not going to top that. And I will also then state that 2 of the absolute lowest moments for me in my entire career were events where one event in which I won and Abby didn't, and another event in which Abby won and I didn't. And those were like gut wrenching. Nobody talks the whole drive home. Oh. It's really miserable. I mean, we get over it. We're best friends.
Right.
But, I mean, and like, I also think, and this is kind of branching off, but also when you talk jump heights, right? So it's a little bit better when you're not in the same jump height. Right. Because Abby's success at 12 inches and my success at 16 don't really cross over.
Right.
But when we're in the same height and there can only be one winner, it gets so much harder. And I know that is something I've heard many people talk about. They'll go out of their way to not get dogs in the same jump height because of that. So not quite, we're getting a little off topic on the whole, litter mates and same age, but that same emotion, I think, can come into play. I guess that feeling, that's what I'm thinking about.
Right, exactly. And, now, when we talk about it, I'm like, I don't know that I have like an answer for people, I feel like it's just like, these are things that you have to consider and kind of like self-interrogate, like how your brain works and how your emotions work and like what's important to you and, how well you bounce back, how well the other person bounces back, when you do all of these things. I don't think, I think what we're getting at here is there's not a right or a wrong answer, but we can give you a lot of our, personal experiences in kind of, like you said, the highs and lows. I think it was super interesting what you said about like the absolute pinnacle being when y'all landed that NAC at the same time, but then how you had a moment where you won, but it is a low point in your career because of, just the mismatch in timing. So I think it's kind of just something to be aware of, but I do think you're right. I think different breeds helps, different heights helps, things like that.
I mean, I've had, and this was relatively recently within the last 5 years, I guess. I think of that as kind of being recently where, a person had reached out to me about a Sheltie puppy. And then their friend reached out to me about a Sheltie puppy, and they basically contacted me and said, like, we can't do litter mates. Like, we may both want dogs, but like they knew themselves enough. And I guess that's what it was. They were friends. They were from the same general area. They were going to cross paths at shows, and they were self-aware enough, or at least the one person was self-aware enough. Maybe the other person didn't know, to say, I don't think, being training partners and having dogs from the same litter is going to be a great idea. It seems fun. And especially in the training stages, I think it is, but they were self-aware enough to say, maybe this isn't what's best, and, not get dogs at the same time. And then in the case of the person who wrote into us, I believe they had already decided or even already gotten the puppy. They weren't really asking us. I think they were saying,
they were just like, this would be an interesting conversation.
So I agree. There's not really a right answer. And I do think with the way social media works these days and how easy it is to stay in touch, you can have that with good or bad, right? Either aspect of what we're talking about, even if it's not right in your area. It used to be if you weren't at the local training class, you didn't know what the litter mate was doing. But now everybody posts videos and they put things online, and there's puppy groups. So you can have the joys of training with dogs at the same age or litter mates or whatever, and, the struggles with it, even when you're not in close proximity. So yeah, it's kind of an individual thing. Yeah. Things to think about.
Right. So I think I have come up with the answer, not the answer, or at least a piece of the answer. And I think that it's basically what we have put this podcast together for. It is, proactively being aware of the potential feelings, conflicts, situations, because I think anytime you are aware of the possibility of a situation, it blunts the situation's like impact on you, right? If you thought it was all going to be perfect, and then the first time y'all go head to head and one of you wins, like there's like some hurt feelings or whatever, and it comes out of nowhere, that is a lot harder to deal with than if like you have a conversation with your friend or whatever, and you're like, okay, sometimes we're going to compete against each other, and that's okay. And I'm going to work really hard to be excited for you, even if I haven't done well. But there are going to be times when I'm going to have a hard time getting out of my funk from, and like lay it out on the table. And I think that just, knowing that could happen and kind of talking about like your planned response, like absolutely takes a huge edge off of those feelings when they do come. So I guess that is my solution here, is to say, hopefully this podcast gave everybody things to think about, to prepare for, and to kind of understand the full gamut of possibilities in terms of what might happen, how it might feel, and all of that.
I think I'll come at it from a parent perspective.
I was going to mention that too. Yeah.
And, Jen's, cooking now with the second.
Yep.
So, and that opens up the realm of, comparison. Right. But one very cool thing that she's done is space out her kids. And so you're going to forget a lot more.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for her to compare her two kids head to head because, Ethan's terrible twos were so long ago. It's not going to be fresh on her mind. So I think the comparisons are going to be much less sharp. And our two kids are spaced 5 years apart.
5.5 years apart.
Yeah. So pretty helpful there. But yeah, when you're getting these puppies, even unrelated and like at least 10 times worse if they're litter mates, right? It's like right there.
Yeah.
They're in exactly the same phase. And I think that's where comparisons become very, very sharp because I think a lot of times are very well intentioned, right? So my dog is doing X. What about yours? And then if they're also doing X, then you can feel good about it. You're like, oh, okay, maybe, they're just not mature enough. Physically they haven't developed, so they don't have this skill yet. Or is your dog losing teeth on the tug toy? So is mine. And these can be very helpful things. So then you can quit tugging at the same time, same period of time, or be on the lookout. So I think there's a lot of helpful things about it. For all the negative stuff, I think staying very focused on the individual. So you got to realize like your kids are different. And then these dogs are different and even litter mates. And this is where the genetics, it's so crazy. Like if I think about it, it really freaks me out even sometimes. The kids are more related to each other than they are to either one parent.
Right.
Right. So like if we're looking for a donor, the donor isn't going to come like an organ donor or something. It's not going to come from a parent. It's going to come from a sibling. Right. The two of them are so closely genetically related. And because I think we live in an era where science has really done so many amazing things. We look at that and we make these really strong assumptions and we tie our like psychology and emotions to it. And that assumption is that, hey, we even have a cause for behavior, right? Genetics now. Genetics and environment. Of course, they're basically in the same environment, right? They were in the same womb. We train the same way. We run the same way or whatever. We're using the same dog walk training method, right? So you're like, oh, they should be super similar. They're so similar. Why are they not? And I think we just really underestimate the amount of variation there is in
the individual. Yeah.
In individual dogs, right? I think it's more obvious with children. Like humans tend to do a better job there.
Like we don't expect our children to be cookie cutters of each other.
Right. Not so much, but dogs, I think we really do. In fact, it's part of our holy grail. Like when we're searching for litters and considering like, what are we going to do for a dog, right? We're looking at repeat breedings and, you get litter mates and things like that. So I think that can really, cause a lot of, turmoil in a way that's different from children. So is what just came to mind.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I think raising dogs is harder than the two children, and parents do have this problem with comparing their children.
Or comparing your children to other people's children,
Yeah,
like comparison 100%. In general is something that we do and can be instructive, but I kind of feel like that if I'm just going to throw out a random stat based on nothing.
Oh my God.
I would say that like 80% of comparison is negative and like 20% is like helpful, right? That's my totally made up stat. But I feel like most of the time, like when we're comparing and everything, I guess it's only helpful like if you come out on top, right? But if you come out on top, somebody else comes out on bottom. And that's where I think doing it with a friend hurts. It's okay if like if you think your kid is better than like somebody else's kid and you don't know that person, right? Then you're like, yay, my kid is better. But like if you're comparing like your kid to, to your niece or your nephew or your best friend's kid or whatever, that's where, like there's no joy in it either way. You don't want to be behind, right? But you don't wish ill on them either. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. All right. Well, Not many answers, but a lot to think about. So thank you very much for asking the question. And that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Canine Handler Fitness with Liz Joyce. Happy training.
Thank you for listening to Bad Dog Agility. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, updates, and links to all our socials, just check out our website, www.baddogagility.com. If you haven't already signed up for our email subscription, we would love to have you join the BDA community. Until next time, take care.